So we'll get to some of those questions that were or issue suggestions in future chats and future posts as well.
Yeah, I'll compile a list, and if you guys want to troll through the comments too and see if you can find something. But
yeah, okay.
yeah, I have to admit I haven't done that yet.
Okay. So I think what we're going to talk about today are the array of things that can cause writers problems, whether it's imposter syndrome or being afraid of sharing your work with other people, or family life and work life and everything else that gets in the way. Does anybody want to start with any of those specific topics? Have you always been open to getting feedback? Has there ever been a time when you were first starting that you were afraid or leery about sharing what you were doing with other people?
Not really, no. I was sort of glad just to communicate with other writers who were out there and kind of see what they were doing and help them out and that kind of thing. So no, I don't think I was ever really reluctant. It just kind of seemed like a natural part, especially once I started thinking about and actually publishing my own stuff. I thought it was really necessary to take that step, because otherwise you might be sort of self-deluded or whatever, just to make sure that my stuff was comprehensible by somebody, a reasonably intelligent person.
I'm not sure how much of this I've shared, but when I was in high school and college, I hated to write. But oddly enough, when I went to college, I wanted to major in journalism. And I didn't like to write. I didn't think I was a good writer, but that's what I thought I was going to do. And I took one journalism class and never took another journalism class again, and switched my major eventually. And one of the reasons why was I couldn't handle the criticism that the professor provided to the work that we submitted. And so I really get that fear and that concern about, if you share it with someone, what are they going to say? And what if they don't like it? Or what if they bash it? And it can be very, very difficult. And all I know is that when I started doing this almost 20 years ago now, I wrote something and I shared it with a few people, and I just kept writing. And the thing to me is, if I'm going to do this, I mean, we go back to some of the earlier conversations we've had, and what are your objectives? If your objective is just to write, that's fine. But if you're writing a story or something that you think at some point the world is going to see, you got to share it with people. And you got to open yourself up. And that's one of the things that, you see these various memes and things on Twitter or social media or elsewhere about how a writer is basically bearing their soul when they share their story with the world. And I don't know if I'd go that far, but you're basically opening yourself up to get praise, to get ridiculed, to get everything in between. And you have to just be willing and able to do it. Start maybe with people that you trust, that you honest.
I don't mind opening up to just everybody. It's weird, but submitting to gatekeepers, that's where I have a problem. Yeah. And I guess that's why I went the self-published route in the end, instead of persisting with trying to get it right for somebody who could say, yeah, we'll take your work on, or no, we won't. Because maybe if you're just starting out in your 20s, you can take the long road and do that. But I just didn't see the point of, I thought, man, if I start with sending stories to little obscure journals and hoping that kind of builds up a kind of track record that will impress somebody at a publisher, I'll be like 100 before I ever get that. And also, I don't think they're looking for old people who are retired and just started writing after they finished writing. I think people like, there's too many of us and nobody really is interested in that sort of persona. So I thought, no, given that self-publishing became a thing and became relatively easy, I thought that's the way I'm going to do it, because I can actually do that. Whereas the other thing is just like doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So,
Right.
yeah.
And if you don't have an agent and a publisher, then you don't have multiple people telling you that you actually need to write your story different than the way you wanted to write it.
Yeah, although, I mean, if people, okay, with the beta readers, if some of them say, this is great, and others say it's not so good, I can cope with that, because I can say, well, it's
Right.
my work, I'm the publisher, I can, go ahead or not. But it's sort of like whether we'll let you in or we won't let you in. That sort of thing, just kind of, maybe I'm, just the word submit bothers me. You know that. I've even written a blog post about that. You have to submit, you got to crawl on the floor, with you rolling your thing along with your nose, and then I'll stomp on you. And that's how I see it. So, yeah, maybe I have the wrong attitude. But imposter syndrome, yeah, it's there. I mean, let's face it, every time we turn around, someone's telling us about things you shouldn't do, or things you should do, or things you're probably doing wrong. And it's a wonder that any of us ever got the oomph together to publish anything, us four. So, yeah, I still have doubts as to whether I'm a real writer, even though I'm, because being branded self-published kind of makes you suspect right there, even now. Anyway, what do you guys think? I think I've monopolized long enough.
We'll go back to, because I have a lot to say on imposter syndrome, but let's hold off on that for a moment. About the feedback, I think in past broadcasts, I pointed out that I was in user interface design, and it gets drilled into you that the whole purpose of what you're doing is to make the design easier for other people to use. And you won't know that, no matter how much you think you're an expert, until you bring in other people. And so that training became natural for me. When I started to write, I realized that even though I'm self-published, and even though that gives me control, I do want people to read and enjoy what I'm writing. Again, depends on your goals. If you want to write something that no one is going to read, by all means. But if you expect other people to read it, you probably would like to know what they think. And you don't necessarily have to take that, but you have to be thin-skinned about it. The whole purpose is, people are going to get something out of what you've written, and it's all going to be different based on their experiences, backgrounds, etc. And there are times I know I've written, say, certain things in the storyline that I thought I repeated maybe too many times, and somebody would say after reading it, I didn't quite get why that was happening. But okay, when I thought I explained it 6 or 7 times, but maybe pull those all out and concentrate in one spot where it's more obvious. I did that in the first book. I actually added a small chapter that I didn't want to do, but it gave clarity. And when I gave it again to some other readers, that didn't come back. That, oh, we didn't understand this part. So, I can only see value in it, in getting, because that's ultimately your goal, is have other people read it. So this gives you an opportunity to take your message and refine it. It's all, and again, like I say, you got to be thin-skinned about it. You have to understand that people are going to dislike what you've written, and people are going to like what you've written. But the key thing is, do they understand what you've written, right? I don't mind someone saying, I thought I liked fantasies. I read your book, and it just really didn't, it didn't gel with me, and I didn't like it. It wasn't the kind of fantasy I was expecting. I go, good, that's a personal opinion on life. But if they said, like I said before, I don't understand this motivation, it confused me, then I got to rework it. So again, depends on your goals, but I'm a very big proponent for getting people to at least give a pass read. And first target, I've always said, target your main audience first. And then if you're lucky enough to get 1 or 2 people who might want to read outside of what they're used to, if you can get that, that's great. But if you can, at least your main audience would be the first step. That's
Bertold, do you have anything?
I mean, when I was first working on some stories and stuff, a friend of mine, offered to do some beta reading. So I sent him some of my stuff. And, I was nervous about it. And, he came back with some criticisms, some of which he was like, I don't want to say harsh, although he said it might sound a bit harsh, but he said some things, he made some critiques. And, at first, my first reaction was like, oh man, that stings. And then I was like, well, he's right. And then I realized, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. I can live with that. And it's a tearing the Band-Aid off process for me. It's like, as you get used to it, it sort of gets easier. And the more people you show your work to, yeah, some people are just going to be like, it wasn't for me. Other people are going to complain. And after a while, you get used to it. But yeah, I mean, at first it was tough to do, but it's sort of just a building up a resistance thing for me.
In the parlance of today, you were building up your immunity.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to get booster readers.
Yes, exactly. So you mentioned imposter syndrome. I think I think that's just a fascinating thing, and I never heard about it until writing and other people started talking about it. And I think I pretty much have spent my whole life, every aspect of my life, with imposter syndrome. I mean, it's just I am riddled with self-doubt, and I focus on what I don't do right rather than what I do right. So I just have this never-ending question of, am I worthy, or am sorry, we're going to turn this into a therapy session for me. But I always tell the story, and again, if I'm repeating the story here, my apologies. But when I started, in my other life, I'm an attorney, and in 2005, I was promoted to be general counsel in the state agency that I worked for. And the chief deputy came in that morning and said, "Congratulations." And I said, I don't know. I feel like a little kid wearing his dad's suit. And that feeling never went away. I got better at the job and I got more comfortable about it. But whether it's in my work, in my home, my family, being a parent, writing, it's imposter syndrome is kind of a part of who I am. And the way I deal with it is I trust the people who give me feedback, who care about me and are going to give me honest opinions. And if they say I'm doing okay, then I'm going to trust them that I'm doing okay. So.
Yeah, I'm sort of the same way, I have to admit. But it's funny, it's sort of one or the other. It's black and white. I can go feeling, yeah, I'm good at whatever, gardening, writing, being a librarian, whatever. And then I can sort of just do a little quarter turn and think that I'm terrible at all that stuff. And it's been like that all my life. Yeah. And so in the end, I sort of figure, well, I must be semi-okay, because if I wasn't, something would have happened like in the real world, not just in my mind, that would have proven to me that I'm really doing badly at different things. So I have to kind of remind myself of that. But I think everyone has a bit of that, some sort of self-doubt element. And I think it's been labeled imposter syndrome, but maybe that's for an extreme case of it where you truly do feel like you're an imposter in your own life and really you should be doing things much better. So.
Well, I'm like you, Mark, where my life, the way it's turned out, every single opportunity I had, I kind of fell into, and it wasn't what my goal was. So, but it was a great opportunity, and I had to suddenly learn a new skill, whatever. So I always felt like, I'm faking it until I can be good enough. Now, just want to bracket this, that as far as work habits and work skills, I am anything but overconfident. In fact, I have a huge ego in that. However, so I want to put that contrast there. It's not a matter of just self-doubt. You can really have that confidence, but the idea is that if you're doing something for a while, even if it's a long while and it's not something that you were, I guess, targeting for, you feel like, again, that you're faking it. Like I'm a business analyst now. I never took a single course in business analysis. I was just given that as a job. And I've actually been doing it for 15 years. So I'm good at it, but still, I feel like I'm faking it because it wasn't the initial goal. So, and there's that aspect of it. But with writing, and this is why I really couldn't wait to get to this topic, with writing, it's always going to be more so. I just finished watching a movie on Amazon, in fact, the Tender Bar. I don't know, it's I got to read the book because it's a memoir of someone who becomes a writer, and was an okay movie. I enjoyed it, but the idea is at the very end of this movie, the narrator, who is the author, is telling you that, if you want to become a lawyer, you have to, pass, take the LSAT, pass the bar, et cetera. There are all these, points where you have to pass, and then you're set. People tell you are now a lawyer. If you want to become a doctor, if you want to go anything, pretty much. But when you're a writer, who tells you you're now a writer? You just realize at that moment, he tells, this is the moment of my life when I realized I was a writer. And that's the thing, I think with writing, you have a lot more vagueness to it. I talked before about, the act in previous video sessions we've had on the act of creation is always subjective. Destruction is easy. You level something, it's gone. Easy. I've done it. But creating, have you created something worthwhile? It's so subjective. It's going to leave you with a lot of softness and fuzziness. And the more there is of that, the less confident you can be just by nature. Who told you were a writer? And you're telling people you're a writer. Just that alone makes you feel like you're faking it. Right? So, it's definitely more strong than any other area I've been in before that I felt as an imposter. But then I actually is a little bit more confident, because when you're talking to other writers, you can say to yourself, well, who says you're a writer? I mean, we all write, and by that definition, we're writers. So, there is no clear dividing line. So, yeah, it's a very powerful feeling.
I think I tweeted about this a couple weeks ago. I went to pick up some food at a Togo's, and while the guy was making my sandwiches, he asked me what I had planned for the weekend, and I mentioned some writing projects that I was going to work on. And so he said, "So you're an author?" I was like, "I guess." But it just sounds so weird, It's just like, okay.
And again, the habit of saying, yes, I am. I am the author.
Tell us about your imposter syndrome, Bertold.
Well, I think I pretty much have that in every aspect, work, writing, whatever. But I've talked to so many other people who report the same thing. I've kind of come to the conclusion, and this is probably not true, but this is how I deal with it, which is to think everybody has this. Everybody believes that they're faking it, so it really doesn't matter. Yeah. All, I love your phrase, Mark. We all feel like a kid wearing our dad's suit or something.
Yeah, I was in that position for 15 years, and all I wanted to do was get out before people realized that I was a sham.
Yeah,
seriously, it's just like, okay, please the man behind the green curtain or whatever it is, just let me leave before you realize that. So,
yeah. See, the thing about being retired is when you're retired, that's what you are, right? You can't get fired from being retired, or you can't.
I don't know. My wife's probably going to try to do that to me.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this topic, and one of the things I thought a way to kind of conclude it is, I have over the years, had conversations with a number of female friends who have self-image issues. And what I always tell them is that when they look in the mirror, they should look at themselves the way the people who love them and care about them see them. And I think it's the same way with writers and anything. If you have self-doubt, if you have self-image issues, if you think you're an imposter, think about what the people who care about you are saying about you. And in the context of writing, I think we all have people whose opinions we trust. And we get reviews, some of them are good, hopefully fewer of them are bad, but especially people that I don't know, when I get a positive review from someone that I don't know, that's a huge boost, because I know that person took the time to write a review and say something good about something I did, and they didn't do it because they're my friend or my brother or this or that. So just, focus on those things, both the people and the surprise positive responses that you get. In our last chat, we ended with a very brief conversation about writing environments. And afterwards, I think all three of you said you wanted to talk more about that. Do you want to spend the next, I think we have probably about 10 minutes. Do you want to spend the final 10 minutes talking about that? And I'll just open the floor to whoever wants to go.
I'll start this time. I generally write there or outside when the weather's nicer. But the interesting thing about my writing environment, I've posted this on Twitter occasionally, is that it depends on what phase I'm in. In the creation phase and writing phase, I like to be comfortable. I will, there could be plenty of music. I love to use music. It kind of, it's in the back of my mind. It'll be motivating me. Sometimes it'll drift in while I'm writing. The environment just has to be open, free, and can have as much distraction. It doesn't matter because I'm in that create phase. But when I'm editing, completely opposite. I go up and there's a room upstairs and I block everything out. There is no, I try to make it as quiet as possible and so I can just focus because, I really need to just keep again, focused. I even talk about how when I'm doing that, when I'm in the create phase, I won't read other people's work because I'm so influenced by everything around me, impressionable. But then when I'm editing, I could easily, pick up a book on my time, when I'm taking breaks from editing. So it's definitely a night and day scenario with that.
Do you ever go to a coffee shop or a bar or something like that and try to write or edit or?
No, not within the last 2 years. And there aren't many around this town. But when I lived in New York, and when I wasn't writing, putting work out there, but I always wrote my whole life. I would sit in a park sometimes. Or when I was way back when I was in Fordham, they have this beautiful center area. I used to sit there looking towards Keating Hall and just, be scribbling away. Outdoors is fine. And I said, people mulling about, because I'll occasionally stop and look up and look at the world around me. And somehow that keeps the creative process going. So.
Yeah, I couldn't write anywhere except some space that's my space, right? Or a public space. Now, I like writing outside in a park or something. I've never done that, but I think I could do that. Or in a library, like a public library. But coffee shop, no way, because the coffee shop is a business. It's meant to sell coffee and baked goods. And stuff.
If you buy a coffee and get a donut and then you sit there and write.
Well, yeah, but if you sit there and write for a couple of hours, eventually someone's going to say, "Hey, better buy more stuff or get out." And I'm always going to feel that coming, even if it isn't. I'm just going to think, no, this isn't a place for me to do this kind of thing in. So that's just me. So I've never write in a setting like that unless it was the coffee shop or whatever was owned by somebody who was like really close to me, and I don't know anyone like that. So, but that's it. But in terms of the distractions and stuff, I mean, I've written in a room that was just sort of a room that I wrote in, and that was all that happened there, and that worked fine. And I've also written in this room here, which I share with my husband. His computer is sort of like we're back to back, sort of. His is right behind me, except he's not there right now. And I've managed to write from first draft stage through editing and publishing and wrestling with stupid formatting problems and all that in this setting. And so I guess I must be more capable of working under different conditions than I thought. Like if you'd asked me years ago, I would have said, oh yeah, I need my own room that's just empty and it's just me and the door is closed, and if I have music, it's music I've picked specially for this. But I've written while reading blog posts and listening to talk music and also having earbuds in with something else going, and I can do 5 minutes of the writing thing and then break away, and that is weird. I never would have believed myself possible to do that. So it's kind of nice in a way that I can. But anyway, I don't know if there's a difference in the quality between my first few books that I wrote in the peaceful setting and the last couple that I wrote in the more distraction-prone way, but I've been able to pull it off both places. So there you go.
Sometimes I'll write, if I'm writing a specific type of scene, I'll try to create the environment I want. I have two examples of this that I think work well. So in my short story, One in G4, that's set on a platform out in the ocean. And I've never been on the ocean, and there's not easy access to the ocean in Ohio. But I thought, well, I can be near water. So I went down to the Olentangy River, which is a decently sized river in Ohio, and just sat on a bridge over the water. And I wrote the scenes that were near the water while I was there. And it kind of helped because, like, I could look up and see, like, oh, look at how the sun is reflecting off of the water. I could put that in the book. And my second example is in Vespasian Moon. There's a scene where they're in a cabin late at night. It's lit by candlelight. So for that, I woke up, like, I deliberately woke myself up very late at night. I got up, I lit some candles, and I just wrote the scene in the dark in my room with candlelight flickering, just to try to get the right feel. And I mean, you know, it would be up to readers to judge, but I felt like this makes me write the scene and think about the scene in a different way than if I just wrote it as I normally write most things, just sitting at my desk, you know, whatever, not paying any attention to things. So that's one trick I like to do once in a while is just, if I easily can, you know, I suppose for the directorate, you know, I should have built, you know, a space elevator and gone up there, but that was too hard.
Next time.
Yeah, next time, exactly.
That's an interesting thing. It reminds me of the writing group that I was in for a while, led by a woman by the name of Zoe Keithley that I've talked about, and she had all these different exercises. But one of them could be a mental way to do what you did with those two settings, Bertold, which is basically she would tell us to, you know, just picture a spot, and it could be a spot in a story we're working on, or just for sake of this exercise. And then she would say, okay, who's in that spot? Identify someone who's in that spot. And then she'd go through a series of things. What do you hear in that spot? What do you smell in that spot? And then, you know, identify an object that's in that spot, and then identify an object that's in that spot that you wouldn't expect to be there. And it's you know, again, it's kind of a visual, a mental way to do what you were doing, Bertold, which is basically create the spot and then write from that spot. It's interesting. Huh. In terms of my environment, I've gone back and forth over the years, and I think I've mentioned this. When I first started writing, I was stuck in the office with young kids watching TV and playing and doing all sorts of things, and it became a challenge for me to go into the office and be away from them. So I got a laptop, and for the next few years, I did probably most of my writing with my kids around, whether we're outside playing or inside and they're playing or watching TV or whatever. And then that changed at some point, and I needed to be more isolated. Now I pretty much, if I write, it's either here in this bedroom, which is upstairs. It was one of my son's bedrooms, or I'm downstairs. If my wife is home and she has the TV on, then I have to have earbuds in and listening to music if I'm going to write. But I asked about the, you know, the coffee shop or a bar or something like that, because one of the things, my biggest problem with distractions are the distractions that are on my computer, the internet. Everything the internet has to offer, that is the single biggest problem I have. And so every once in a while, it's like, okay, I'm sorry, but I have to try to write for a couple of hours. So I go to a cafe or a brewery or something, and I sit down, and, you know, most places have Wi-Fi now. I make a point, I don't ask what their Wi-Fi password is, so I don't know. And then I sit and write for a couple of hours. And one time I went somewhere like that, and I had my laptop in my hand, and as I got whatever I ordered, she said, "Oh, and the Wi-Fi password is this." No, don't tell me. I don't want to know. Now I know. So, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing to me, is trying to figure out the spot where I can write without those distractions. And I end up doing, I think, a lot of like what you said, Audrey, 5 minutes of writing, and then I look at something, and then I go back and write for 15 minutes, and then I go look at something, and then I come back. And if I do that, then I get something done. But frequently I go do something and I never get back to it. So
yeah, it's sort of a mental spot you have to be in.
Yep.
The physical spot doesn't matter. So yeah, I think I need less distraction when I'm trying to create the thing, like, you know, when I'm imagining it, and I have to sort of focus on, you know, being in Egypt or being in some kind of situation, and I'm trying to work out the sequences of events and to put them into words in a way that people are going to be able to follow. That sort of thing, I think I can't do with all that stuff happening around me, I guess. Yeah. But, or at least it's harder if there's more distractions around. But editing and so on, I think it actually works better if you can focus intensely for a few minutes or a quarter hour or something, and then distract yourself with something else and then come back to it. But yeah, but it is, a lot of it's sort of being in the right mental space where you're eager and willing, and you're not kind of thinking, oh man, I got to do this now. You know, that's more important even than the physical setting.
you mentioned editing. Do you edit on the screen, or do you print it out and edit it on paper?
I always edit on the screen. I don't like printing stuff out. I find I get nervous if there's too many different paper versions of something sitting around. And in fact, I don't even like having too many different online versions. I like to kind of, so I have draft 1, and then I have draft 2, and then I have draft 3. And once whatever the latest one is the one, and the others are kind of left in the dust unless I lose something or check something again. So yeah, I don't do it. A lot of people say they can only work with a printout because it sort of changes the way the thing looks, and I don't know. I don't need pain to have to scribble things on paper and then go back and work on the thing online.
I do the first bunch of revisions on the computer, and then I get a print copy, you know, a pub, whatever they call it, and then I work from there, because I actually do find different things depending on the meeting. I don't know why that is. I have no rationale for it, but yeah. So I do the final one in print, and I always catch stuff. Well, I'm constantly catching stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe I should do that, given the grief I had with fixing, you know, this post-pub revision or corrections that I posted about on the blog just recently. Maybe a printout would be good, because there are some, like, there was at least one of those errors I must have seen a million times, and I didn't twig until a couple of years.
As someone who's studied cognition, I don't quite understand why the media should have that effect. It's printed words, and they're there in the same, you know, and it's exact same font and everything. But there is, I have noticed the difference, you know.
Well, to me, it's again, the distractions for me are the distractions that are on my computer. So when with longer pieces, novellas, novels, things that I think I'm going to publish, I do what you do, Richard. First I do it on the computer screen, and then I print it out and I take it somewhere where my computer is not.
Okay.
And I sit and do it again with a hard copy, because like I said, if I think what we're all saying is editing takes a different kind of focus. And if I do that while looking at my computer and being distracted by Twitter and my email and, you know, the blogs that I read and CNN, whatever, then I'm not completely in it. And so that's why I edit it both ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should probably do that. Maybe I'll do that with this next one.
I hate printing stuff out, but it's true. You catch stuff that you wouldn't catch otherwise. So
yeah,
it's worth doing once at least.
Yep.
Yeah, especially if you do read the thing backward.
Yeah.
where you start with the last paragraph. It'd be much easier to do that, I think, if you're working from a printout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything
My,
else?
my secret is this is my social media portal, not my computer. So there are games and things on there, but I'm less distracted, believe it or not, on the computer. So I got to keep the phone downstairs when I'm up doing everything.
Yeah. Looks like we have a minute. Anything else anybody wants to say?
Happy writing.
Yep. Happy New Year, and we'll get that list of issues to discuss in future chats and
Yes,
be
I'll
back
get
in a
that
few
out
weeks.
ASAP.